best song?
I was gonna say New York State of Mind is the best song.
You think it's the best song?
Yeah.
Is it your favorite song?
The song I listen to the most is Life's a Bitch.
Okay.
Life's a Bitch is like in rotation for me like every day.
Right.
But New York State of Mind is like, might be a perfect song. Good afternoon, beautiful people. This is another episode of Album Mode. In celebration of the 50th anniversary of hip hop, we've been reviewing albums that have been widely regarded as classics. My name is Adriel Smiley, aka AdrielSmiley.com, aka Adriel Smiley Official, aka The Godfather, and we are here with His Royal Highness King Grant.
Welcome back, people. It's Album Mode 50 is what I've been calling it. The 50th anniversary. We're back. Also with our producer, Chris, aka Patient Zero. Happy to see everybody. Happy to hear from everybody. And we're here with Nas Illmatic.
Yeah.
Okay. Adriel wanted to do this poll about the 90s hip-hop album to do, and I legitimately just said we're doing Nas Illmatic, one of the most important albums in the genre.
Now that was a good veto. That's a veto we appreciate.
Illmatic is basically, I would say, it's a top 3 album in the genre, and it's not number 3 probably. It's probably 1 or 2.
Wow.
And I would consider this a genuine masterpiece. I think most people would as well. Just because it's something that this was coming out in the midst. It was 1994 when Illmatic came out, which is in the midst of the West Coast, East Coast beef.
Yeah.
Right? Where people were yelling at people. Some people were, let's say people were going back and forth over beef tracks at this point in time. West Coast and East Coast is just like all-time highs. Or maybe not all-time highs, because 1996 was probably all-time highs, because that's when people actually started to die.
Yeah.
But it was hot at this point in time. And Illmatic by Nas just kind of squeaked out. Just came out here, squeaked out. It was a commercial failure when it came out. I think it was like 59,000 sales in its first week, which today, if you actually had 59,000, that's actually, you can actually be number 1 on the charts right now with 59,000.
How crazy is that?
Sales. But in the 90s, 59,000 was like, you were a nobody.
No, that's basically no sales.
Yeah. So it was a commercial failure when it came out, but literally any place that reviewed music was like, this is a 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10. Masterpiece. I don't understand why people are not listening to it.
Yeah, he was one of the first and probably one of the last actually child prodigies in hip hop. So you saying all these publications are reviewing it and saying it's a masterpiece. That's how much he was revered just by the first album. Yeah. That everyone was reviewing the album. Even though it wasn't selling a lot, everyone said we still had to review this. We actually did do a poll that, once we decided Illmatic was the album we're gonna do, we still did that poll, and we asked what was everyone's favorite song from Illmatic, and the variety of answers is kind of what I want to highlight before we get into where he was at that time, because that shows how great this album is. Is that there? I don't think there's a song that everyone thinks of this album. I think everyone has their own song they think of, and the fact that so many people had so many different answers, I think speaks to the kind of album this is. So, if somehow you're listening to this podcast, I haven't heard Illmatic, you have many things in your life to figure out. Yeah. Let this be at the top of that list.
Yeah, because Illmatic is probably, I said this, Adriel, in our chat, where I'm like, this is probably one of the, probably saved hip hop in a lot of ways, just because in the midst of the beef, hip hop was in a kind of a party phase. Yeah. There's a gangster rap phase. Right. And then by the time, again, 96 came around, those 2 people that were at the forefront of that were dead. Right. When Illmatic came out, this is pretty much, I don't want to say it's the first backpack rap album, but it's definitely at the forefront of backpack rap, where it's like, it's all about the bars, son. And it has, Nas is on it and AZ is also on it.
Shout out AZ.
We're just trying to bar people up. None of it, every song has a hook.
Yeah.
But when we're getting into the nitty gritty of what is happening on this album, it's really about how do I flip a word? How do I use a word that means something in French that also means something in English, but it's actually only a slang term in English, right? And just talking about how to, the internal rhymes, right? You can tell like if you played what we did first was NWA's
Straight Outta Compton,
Straight Outta Compton, and then played this right after, it's like the level of rap is just, it's literally
Miles.
it's not even like two different levels. It's like you're playing a different video game.
yeah.
Right?
A whole different console.
Yeah, it's like you're maybe different console. You're like next generation ahead. You know, this is like the sequel basically to whatever they were doing. So that's something that, you know, is really, really just blindingly evident.
Yeah.
When it comes to this project overall. But you said, to my genuine shock, that you're like, I want to do production first, or do you want to do some more preferencing on Illmatic?
Yeah, I want to kind of set up where we were in hip hop when Illmatic happened, and I think let's start with why the album is even called Illmatic, because he claimed the name comes from meaning beyond ill or the ultimate ill, in reference to his friend who's incarcerated, Illmatic Ice. And he just described the title name as Supreme Ill. This is as ill as it can be. Right. Very interesting because we don't use that as an adjective now. No one says something is Illmatic. Yeah. And I think that only happened because the album was so big. Because what he's saying actually makes some sense here. A word to describe something being as ill as can be. Now, one, it's 2023. People don't say ill in that same way as much anymore. But I think that's just so interesting that as a phrase never, caught on. Yeah. And so many things Nas has said have caught on. Shiesty. He said Shiesty in one of his songs. Low key. Yeah. Right. You would think that, I guess, currently in 2023, we're like, Shiesty and low key, like those are slang terms we use like now, like that's a new thing. It's like, bro, 94, they were doing the same 30
thing.
30 years ago. Yeah. No, so it's like, it's so much that never came on. Now, this got started being recorded in 92, ended up coming out in 94, and said he was like a child prodigy at that time, still a teenager when he started recording this album. And he got a lot of Rakim comparisons. And I thought that's so interesting because we mentioned Rakim a lot. We did our last soundbite talking about the 80s, how Rakim changed rap. Nas is kind of the Rakim of the 90s. Yeah. And I've never put those two together until now, but you talk about this saving hip hop. I can't get there with you. I can't not get there with you.
Bars, son, come on.
But I think he did an amazing job. I want to talk about some artists and projects that were not even out at the time that this came out, and mentioning of like how early he is in the genre. Outkast's first album a couple weeks after this, so there was no Outkast in the world when this came out. Jay-Z first album had not been out 2 years later. Big L would first drop in 95, and then Ready to Die only a few months after this project. Right.
See what I'm saying? No. See what I'm saying? How important it saved hip hop, bro.
No, there's a lot going on before that, but I think he definitely stood out among what's happening before that. And then last but not least, for anyone who doesn't know, we're gonna do a little bit of trivia. I think you may know the answer to these ones. Okay. But please, TikTok, Instagram, let us know if you guys know the answer to these ones. Nas's first recorded debut, the first song he appeared on, recorded.
I'm gonna say, why do I think it's Represent?
Oh, Represent is a good one, good one, but the answer is Live at the Barbecue. Okay. Live at the Barbecue in 91. Oh. His feature with Main Source. So a lot of people were like, when someone has a really good verse and everyone just kind of loves them off of that, that was Nas's version of that. So that's how he really came in. And then this next one, again, please let us know in the comments if you guys guess this before Démar guesses it. What was the first single from this album? This is a gimme because this is the album we're reviewing. So this is something that you should know.
I'm going to say New York State of Mind.
Halftime. Halftime was the first single from this album. New York State of Mind actually not a single, which is very interesting because it is a song on the album that has the most streams as of today. So yeah, very interesting that it has, not a single. But going to production, that was part of the hype. I want to get to the hype of what this was because so much hype for a first album from a teenager. Yeah. When is the next time in hip hop we've seen that?
And again, it was a debut, and when it came out, it failed commercially, but critically, everybody's like, "This is brilliance."
And I think that mix is so unique of all this hype going on beforehand. Everyone knows it's coming, but nobody buys it. Yeah, but everyone says it slaps.
Everybody says it slaps.
He was able to get big producers on his first project, Q-Tip. Now at this point, Low End Theory had already been out, so Tribe was kind of at the top of their game. DJ Premier. We know what DJ Premier means to hip hop. Yeah. He is on the project. Large Professor, Pete Rock. So to have these people on the project for his first, I thought was really impressive.
Yeah, I think that part of being in New York in the 90s is that that's where the hub was.
Mhm.
I mean, there and LA, basically, or let's say California, were the hub. So that's where everybody is from. And that's why at this point in time, New York was quote unquote the Mecca
Yeah.
of hip hop.
Yeah.
Because you can basically throw a rock, like you'd throw a rock in somebody's neighborhood and hit somebody else's door and be like, yeah, that guy's, he's a producer for Jay-Z or some shit like that, So I think that it was really, it's crazy to see that he can get all these people,
Mm-hmm.
but then, it's almost like kind of like an SNL or Freaks and Geeks where,
Oh.
You're like, oh, Nas is on this. It's like, oh yeah, DJ Premier, and then Q-Tip, and then you just like start listing off names, and you're like, how did all these legends end up on the same project? But this is early.
Mm-hmm.
This is Nas's first project. DJ Premier, it was existing.
Yes.
DJ Premier was a thing, right? But then when you start to like fold all those things together, it really reminds me of like Freaks and Geeks or early SNL, where you're just like, oh my God, that person's here, and then that person's here. Like all the Judd Apatow people are all in one room.
I think that's a good one, because that is what it feels like.
Yeah.
And to think that all the people wanted to work with him, like we talked about this on the Jack Harlow review we did last year.
I was listening to this, I was thinking so much about Jack Harlow. It's so crazy.
That's so interesting. And on his album, the one before Jackman,
Mhm.
where he had Timberlake on it, Pharrell on it,
Yeah.
all the Drake, all these big features where it's like Jack is budding up now. He's becoming into his own. We want to work with him. That is Jack's 6th, 7th project.
Yeah.
This is Nas's first ever body of work, and basically anyone who's anyone is saying, let's get together.
Get him in.
Let's make it work. And you talked about him being kind of the king or the father of Backpack.
Mhm.
Backpack and the jazzy hip hop.
Oh my God.
This is where that lives. Like,
Yeah.
I think about songs like Halftime and Memory Lane.
Yeah.
Memory Lane is a song I always think of when I think of that like jazzy hip hop sound. Like that is a beat that always comes to mind. And I think like this is what I think made Nas's album Illmatic really, really resonate. And even to this day, is that all the jazzy sounds he's using of this album give it kind of a muted tone.
Yeah.
Where it is more kind of like everyday music, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Music you'll ride to, you'll walk to. Even though he's rapping his face off.
Yeah. Everybody's face off. Not even his own.
Everyone's face off. But the production, especially in a song like Memory Lane,
Yeah.
it really makes it more chill, even though what he's saying is not chill and how he's saying it is not chill.
Yeah, and even on like New York State of Mind, it's very the jazz influence. Like this is where you would come back to be like, we're going back to our roots. The roots of hip hop.
Real hip hop.
Yeah, real hip hop. With the jazz influence, or like I think Nas's most of this project, right? Most of Illmatic is like, if a guy kind of snuck into a New York lounge bar and kind of was like slipped like the piano player like a few $100 and be like, yo, just like play this song real quick. I'm gonna do something. Right. And then he starts rapping over everything that happens. So it's like for New York State of Mind, it's like this very, very simple like piano range, right? But that like that, I think it's like 3 or 4 notes, like right? Is like a really crazy but really important part of the song. And I feel like overall you get this like that lounge feel, bro. It also kind of establishes the New Yorkness of the entire project, even though, again, currently, New York still kind of doesn't really have I guess it's drill right now.
Yeah.
But New York doesn't really have a unified sound currently. But back then, this was it. Like, it sounded jazzy. We're making space for the rapper to rhyme and stuff like that. And I think that this is one of the easiest or closest or clearest examples to see that it really, even The World Is Yours, right?
Yeah.
It's all piano based. Like a lot of it's really, really piano based. Saxophone that comes in every few seconds. I think, it's just like, wow, we're back in the lounge, we're chilling, relaxing, listening to this guy speak. It's almost like poetry. His raps sound more poetic with the piano instrumentation. So I think it's like, again, this is why it's considered like a masterpiece, stuff like that. It's like, it just sounds like so brilliant. But it's just like, it's almost relaxing. Also makes you feel like you can just like walk down the street and listen to it.
100%.
And then there's also like the relaxing in the lounge and listening to the music. So there's a lot of things happening in the production, man.
Yeah, I think that what you said about it is more poetic. Nas is really the epitome of that when it comes to hip hop, because I've said this a million times. Most hip hop artists are more poets than they are musicians.
Yeah.
A lot of rappers can't play any instruments, can't hold a note, can't tell you what a note is, but they can write the hell out of a rap. And poetry and jazz have always been hand in hand.
Yeah.
So for Nas to put those things together on this album, it's kind of no surprise. One Time for Your Mind. That one is really, we're talking about like a song that's like a pace where you can walk to it, it's chill. One Time for Your Mind is really that. And I like that they have all these elements of the beat that stand out on their own. You know, you mentioned New York State of Mind, that sound you made. There's also the bass in that's dun, dun, dun. Like, you know, you can just listen to that for the whole beat and just be enamored with that. One Time for Your Mind does that as well, with a higher sound and then another lower sound that you can follow. So all these beats, man, I think it's such a cohesive project production-wise for being so many different producers.
Yeah.
Like that is very impressive.
That's really rare, because you think of Nas now, right? I'm realizing that we do a lot of Nas's music on our podcast.
He's made it back.
Yeah. Nas's production now is just purely Hit Boy, like almost only Hit Boy, right? So to see him go from, this was back, and it's also really interesting considering the arc of his career, because we're talking in the very beginning, we're like, oh yeah, the production's awesome. You listen to it, it sounds like the jazz, the lounge, everything is super smooth, super smooth.
Yeah.
Right? And then there was this like period of time in Nas's music where it's like, yeah, the rhymes are dope, but production is trash. It's been like, it's big bad. Right? And then now it's kind of come back full circle where like the production's really fucking good when it comes to Hit Boy and stuff. And then now we're looking back, it's like, you know what, if you could just get Nas on some music that is actually well produced, then you're just making just good music, you know? Like I feel like he's kind of just like he's kind of just a sword. You just got a good sword in a great swordsman's hands.
Yeah.
And you can do great work. But if you got like, you know, your random dude on the side of the street, like as long as, even though it's an amazing sword, like you're not gonna be able to do anything with it. So that's what I've noticed over the arc of his career.
I was listening to a bunch of Nas outside of Illmatic, just thinking about his career and everything. And the song that I came across, which I absolutely never play this Nas song myself, but I'm sure there's someone that does, Hate Me Now, with him and Diddy.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's exactly what you're saying of like, I think why this album is so true is all I think of, like, that's not really describing anything, but this album just stands so tall over test of time, because this era was an era where a lot of people's first albums were like, they said your whole life to make it. Everything was the right way.
Yeah.
The essence of who you were as an artist was more clear. You know, I think that is, even in the production of this project, that is so evident, because a lot of these producers, they're great producers. They have a sound, but it feels like they brought some of their best work for Nas.
Yeah.
And fit whatever they thought would fit Nas. You know, I think about a song like The World Is Yours. That somehow just fits Nas to a T.
Yeah.
And it's like Pete Rock has done amazing things since then. You know, Pete Rock is obviously a legend.
Yeah.
But there's a fit that had of like, okay, we have an understanding of the kind of artist Nas is. Like you're describing it now 30 years later. It feels like whatever you just described, they were speaking about at the time this was being produced.
Yeah, and I mean, that's what makes them, you know, we're talking about again, Premier, Q-Tip, Pete Rock, like we're talking about the heaviest of the
legends.
heavyweights. We're talking, you know, like a Muhammad Ali, like is like chilling in your corner. It's like make sure you just like, if you hang right, you get him with the counter punch, you know. So I think that there's a lot of great things that happens with that. I think that a song like Memory Lane, like one of the things that, this is what I was thinking about, what it kind of related to Jack Harlow, was not just the record scratch. First of all, the record scratch in the hook to make the hook is, again, something that is still prominent to hip hop. Like when we did the first album, why can't I remember the NWA album?
Straight
Outta Compton. Remember how I mentioned like this still has the record scratches to harken back to like, you know, the beginning of hip hop, and it still exists here, right? With Memory Lane, where the record scratches are making the hook. But one thing that the crossover to the Jack Harlow thing was the sample in the record scratch is what makes the hook.
Yeah, I was just going to say, yeah,
right.
The
and
sample
I'm like,
them together.
Yeah, and I'm like, the same thing is Jack Harlow is doing the same thing, and I remember that he was talking about, just like I mentioned this where you have to kind of be a student, right, when you're a white rapper. So I don't know why, like, maybe it's because of like how close that we're doing the review, not making that through line, but it's just really interesting to see that it's like how old that trope is to be brought into something that's happening today, and for it to not sound dated, at all. Yeah. It doesn't sound dated. It's a cool thing to include. Like I think the closest artist or group that like really includes like the record scratching is Brockhampton.
Yeah, they do a lot as well.
Right? And it doesn't sound dated at all, which is so crazy that a production trick that's basically existed since the beginning of the genre is still something that you can apply. Like, oh yeah, that makes total sense.
I think ASAP has done it a lot as well.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is one of those things where, again, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Because of all the rappers we're naming, and Brockhampton's a little different, one, they don't exist anymore. Two, they were a boy band and had a bunch of singers there. But all these rappers that don't really sing, like, this is something you could use in your hook to give your song some more musicality without stepping outside yourself. Because Nas is really that artist. Nas is not going to start using auto-tuning.
Yeah, no.
That's just not happening.
I would love to hear that, though.
We're going to move on from that. My last production note is actually the intro, Genesis. I mentioned him having comparisons to Rakim, him being a rap prodigy. We don't have that many of those. And the Genesis is kind of an ode to that. Like, the tone of the Genesis, a lot of the, what's that they playing on the radio? And the beginning of Genesis, first like 45 seconds or so, that beat is very much 80s old hip-hop sound, which I thought was so interesting because at this time, Dr. Dre was out, Wu-Tang had just released their first project. So things had happened where rap had gone away from that, but I thought it was very interesting where that was so prevalent that the Genesis is basically saying we're moving on from that. We're not doing that no more. So that was so interesting to me, just production-wise, that the Genesis was very much of like out with the old, in with the new.
Yeah, and it was also good for setting the tone for the entire project, where it's like the train, it's like the train, you can hear the train in the background going by. So it's like it's trying to teleport you or give you a train ride to New York. And the guy that's speaking the entire time, like the New York accent heavy, So there's a lot of aesthetically that's going on with going on with Illmatic is that it's really trying to encapsulate you in New York, right? And not let you leave. Never let you leave. Queensbridge, the amount of times I shout out Queensbridge, and the first song is New York State of Mind, right? Like and then we're talking about the pianos, the lounge piano type of style production. Feels like you're walking down the street, right? So it's a lot of like things that encapsulate New York, right? At that time and even currently, where it's like, you're staying here, don't leave. You can't leave. Like, this is where I'm from. This is who I am, right? The life that I'm living. So much of it's like life that I'm living. We're talking about Memory Lane or One Love and stuff like that. There's a lot of the shit that I'm living. So it's just like never allowing you to escape. It's really like, it grips you, never, ever, ever let you go from New York. So I think that the intro Genesis is like integral to that.
Yep.
Right? Because you got even the dudes arguing, you know what I mean? Like, you're taking the
you can just see the bodega in the background.
like, like if you've ever been to New York taking the train, like people arguing on the train 24. I feel like it happens every day, right? Even here in Toronto, I feel like that should happen so frequently. So I think that it's excellent in establishing that, right? And never feel like you get let out. And I think it's a credit to the production that you never feel, it never feels amiss.
Yeah.
Never feel like, there's no song that I could say that's like badly produced.
Yeah.
I think one of the songs that you mentioned that I think is like probably my least favorite song is One Time for Your Mind. Just because of I think it just slows everything down. But there's still that like creeping at creeping at night type of feeling to it. That the bass is really doing. So it's awesome. I think that we're We're just here to sing more praises.
Show some love.
Yeah.
yeah. There's no low scores for Illmatic, you couldn't tell.
What Time for Your Mind is the only thing that I'm like, it's okay, right? But I still think it fits the aesthetic of what is happening. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
I only have one set of lyrics.
How?
And well, how can you choose lyrics on a Nas album?
Right.
What can you even choose? Well, I'll say the one that I have that's not my lyrics first. And it's from Halftime. Nas has this bar: "You couldn't catch me in the streets without a ton of reefer. It's like Malcolm X catching the jungle fever."
I had that down too.
Like,
very rare that Nas is funny. He's not really a funny rapper.
Yeah, and I think like the things like this that Nas says, I think is just so funny. It shows his confidence so early. You know, that's what I think of is like he definitely already felt like he was a man, you know, before the first album even dropped. So that's one of those lines that shows that. But my actual lyrics come from AZ.
Okay, you're reading my mind when it comes to this.
Wow, we're on the same page.
Yeah.
Because this was basically AZ's peak. Now, AZ actually released an album a few months ago, so shout out to AZ. He's finally back out. But there's that line that anyone who was around at that time said it was supposed to be AZ and not Jay-Z.
Yep, exactly.
And this was like his peak. Before, though he had some verses up leading up to this, but this was it. This was it. And he says that he didn't think that this verse was good. He thought this song was whack. And that once people started liking the song behind the scenes, and then when it came out, it gave him the confidence to continue rapping. I'm not really gonna be able to rap this AZ lyric. Usually I'll do, but
yeah,
I don't have the enemy visualizing the realism of life in actuality. I really want to go in and do it, but I'm like, there's just no chance. But he goes from there all the way into, but as long as we leave in, we'll be leaving with some kind of dough. That whole first part of the rap is probably one of the most recognizable starts of a verse.
Which is so crazy because that first line is like, what the fuck are you even talking about?
Me reading that at normal pace was difficult.
Right.
Visualizing the realism of life in actuality.
Right. And you also have to think, what does that even mean? Like, you actually, that's what, it's the first bar in the song, bro. And we're trying to be like, okay, what does that mean again?
and second thing to that, when's the last time you heard someone say that?
Yeah.
He probably the last person to ever say those words together. But two things from that verse that stand out to me is him mentioning 5%ers. We don't talk 5%ers at all anymore.
Yeah.
And 5%ers was a huge thing in the 90s. So I thought that was so interesting.
5%er, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
And then the next thing he says is, something must have got in us because all of us turned to sinners. Of him being like, I'm a 5%er, but I'm not living to the law right now. I thought that was so interesting because basically this whole song is not I don't want to say depressing, but it's like, you know what? You only live one life. Gotta do whatever you want kind of thing. And just to think of AZ, who's known as a gangster rapper, this is this era of hip hop. He's basically being like, yo, I know better than this. I should be doing better than this.
Yeah.
You don't hear that very often. So I think that bar specifically aged very well.
Yeah, and also it's just so crazily ear grabbing. Like as soon as he says that, it's like being a person that like question marks is appear above your head. You're like, what the fuck is this?
Like a comic book.
Yeah, you're like, what? And it definitely pulls you in immediately, right? And now you actually have to follow AZ, what he's doing. I love that you mentioned it was supposed to be AZ, not Jay-Z, because I was thinking that I had that written down too. That verse is probably going to be the only verse a lot of hip hop fans, like unless you're really digging into it, of AZ are probably going to hear.
Oh, for sure. For
right?
sure.
So I think it's just like a crazy good showcase for him. And I think that, a lot of things that he comes into is awesome. But one of the things that, again, I think most people would attribute this to Nas, but it was AZ that was doing it, is the hook. Life's a bitch and then you die. That's why we puff fly, because you never know when you're gonna go. Right? We all know that this is from this song, but I think most people would not think that AZ is the person that does that. He came up with that.
Yeah. No, this is mostly an AZ song.
Yeah.
And I think that's something I think is so interesting because, yes, this is obviously on Nas' album. We know Nas is a part of this, but most of the vocals on this song is AZ. So, now, like, if someone who hasn't heard this song or doesn't know who AZ is, the first time they're hearing about this, hearing this song, hearing AZ on it, I can extremely understand why it was supposed to be him and not Jay-Z. Like, you know, how good he performs on this song, I 100% get it.
Yeah, and I think that you know, that line is iconic. Iconic. I mean, this album has a lot of iconic lines in it.
Yeah.
And this just happens to be I guess it's 2 bars, but it's really just like a one-liner. Life's a bitch and then you die. I think that it's awesome. I think that like it shows the longevity of like this project.
Yeah.
To have, you know, lines like that survive to the point where you don't even know who said it.
Yeah.
That's right.
Nas is the king of that.
Yeah, you just like, it's so insanely popular, so insanely relevant that the person who said it is no longer important anymore, right? Like people will just say that and they probably won't even know where it's fully from. So I think that is incredible. I think that also, again, this project has a lot of those, right? Like a lot of those where it's even on, I want to say on New York State of Mind, I think is like, you know, I'm out. Wait, is it New York State of Mind? Hold on a second. Where he's like, I'm out for presidents to represent me.
Say what?
Right? I'm out for dead presidents to represent me. Whose world is this? Is where it's from. I'm literally just like recalled that. Yeah. Whose world is this? Right? I'm out for presidents to represent me. And then for that song, for that like lyric to get adapted by the person he was beefing with, Jay-Z. And then he's like, actually, I'm going to turn this into like a hit song. Into Dead Presidents.
Crazy.
Is crazy, right? And again, you would think that, you know, you would probably attribute that to Jay-Z. But Nas is, again, like that, this album is the breeding ground for so much shit in what is important in the genre.
Yeah, I'm happy you mentioned that. I don't have any more lyrics, but I think that it's a great point to mention that there are things like that we just say now. Yeah. That we don't even really remember where they're from. And I think Nas has a lot of that. Like Nas has a lot of the sayings or phrases that he says that become, you know, part of the vernacular. Yeah. And
like the example, I don't sleep because sleep is the cousin of death.
That's one that I always think of. And it's like, you could say it to someone who doesn't know hip hop and they might think some philosopher said it hundreds of years ago, you know?
This is why we, go ahead, sorry.
No, go ahead.
That's why we kind of attribute Nas to being more of a poet when he writes, because, you know, like that is not a musical line to really say. Yeah. Right? You would never really say that it's not catchy in any sort of way. It's really just poignant, right? So on New York State of Mind where he's like,
it drops deep. As it does in my breath, I never sleep, because sleep is the cousin of death.
And then there's the part after that.
Behind the walls of intelligence, life is defined. I think of crime.
And I'm on New York State of Mind, right? So there's a lot, again, it's just like that leads into the hook, right? And that part is just like such a poignant line where it's just actually just legitimately just brilliant. Like it's actually it's really hard to describe it other than like this is like genius level rapping that Nas does. And I know we're kind of like focusing on like bits and pieces instead of like the, you know, his rap sheet where you can be like, look at, you know, the internal lines and then the AB and then it's AC and then it's AD and then it's AAA. You know what I mean? But I think even just like smaller parts like this where you're just like, man, like even just like the one-liners. We're talking about one-liners, right? We're talking about one-liners.
And sorry to cut you off. These are one-liners that are in the midst of his verse, not one-liners where the whole beat drops and he drops his one-liner and it's back to business.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just that is the thing that why we consider Illmatic a masterpiece. We're dedicating this our lyric section is like, yo, the one-liners. You know what I mean?
Nah, he's that good.
And I think the strength to Illmatic overall is just like if you actually just read the lyrics to the rap, like most, like if you just read the lyrics while you're listening to it, it actually amplifies the music, right? There's a lot of artists where like it's not necessary, or like we've reviewed artists where we're reading it and we're like, this actually is making it worse. It's making it worse. But for Nas, especially Illmatic, it's like you're reading it and you're like, whoa, right? There's like a whoa thing that's happening where you're just trying to catch up and trying to figure out what he said, or like, you know, these double entendres that are coming up. Like, it's crazy, right? And we're taking all this time to one-liners. Like, I have like a couple other parts that I would bring up, but this is just one-liners we're talking about, man.
I think Nas, in this album, you see why he's considered one of the best rappers to ever touch a mic.
Right.
But we talk about, we reviewed King's Disease 2 a few months ago. He hasn't fallen off much.
Yeah.
And to think 30 years later, he's still at that same level is pretty incredible. I want to talk more about his career, but if you have any more lyrics, we can get to those.
For more lyrics, we did talk about the Jungle Fever one, which is probably, again, one of the funniest lines.
So funny.
But I think in New York State of Mind, which I think is the best song. Which song do you think is the best song?
I was going to say New York State of Mind is the best song.
You think it's the best song?
Yeah.
Is it your favorite song?
The song I listen to the most is Life's a Bitch.
Okay.
Life's a Bitch is like in rotation for me like every day.
Right.
But New York State of Mind is like, might be a perfect song.
Yeah,
like,
it's a perfect song. I would say it is a perfect song because there's multiple things that are happening in it. First of all, like we mentioned, like, you know, there's an iconic line, right? Then it's a storytelling song.
Yeah.
But you would never really actually...
You wouldn't realize that.
You wouldn't realize that because usually when artists, like rappers, do a song that's like storytelling, kind of sacrifices catchiness, kind of sacrifices flow. They will sacrifice flow. They will sacrifice not every bar like rhymes, you know? This song is just like, it rhymes 100% all the time. It's catchy all the time. It's got the iconic line in it, you know? And he's going for double entendres in the storytelling rap, bro.
He's
like... He's like it's like I'm like Scarface sniffing cocaine, holding an M16. See with the pen I'm extreme. Remember pen, right? Yeah. Now bullet holes left in my peepholes. I'm suited up in my street clothes. Hand me my 9 and I'll defeat foes. Y'all know my stilo with or without the airplay, right? I keep AG sitting bent up in the stairway. AJ sitting bent up in the stairway. Sorry. So that part when I say hold an M16C with the pen I'm extreme, right? Then he comes back, he's like, you don't know my stilo with or without the airplay, right? That is like pen, like stilo in French is pen, right? So for him to use 2 different languages, which is in the span of like what 4 bars, to say the same word but in a different language, and then stilo is also like. In the 90s, you say your stilo is your style. Yeah. Right? So you know my style, right? But you also know my pen at the same time. And he's like, with or without airplay, you know, I keep some EJ and sit bent up in the stairway. Like, even like he's like, you know, even if you don't recognize it, that's what he's basically saying. Even if you don't recognize it, I'm still out here with the style. I'm still out here with the pen, even if the radio doesn't play me. And I think that it's crazy to be able to do that in 4 bars.
like masterfully.
Yeah.
And again, another part of this that I don't say it didn't age well, but shows the times. I keep some E and J. Yeah. When's the last time anyone has drank E and J?
That's true.
I don't even know if that's still on sale. So yeah, it just shows the times. Just shows the times.
So that part is just I don't know, man. Like you just think about like artists overall, and just like very few people can even get to this level. Yeah. And then for it to be as smooth, like buttery smooth, right? And then the production also to match it is why Illmatic is so amazing. Yeah. You know, like if you're a hip hop fan, even if you're not into hip hop, this is like one of those albums that you give to people. And
no,
like,
you have to. Yeah. Before we go on to his career, in that same verse, and this is like part of just the alien that Nas is. The beginning, he says, rappers, I monkey flip them with the funky rhythm I be kicking, musician inflicting composition.
Yeah.
To start your verse like that, like the chance of someone messing up those lyrics is extremely high. And so for a rapper to start his verse like that is the flex on itself. Yeah, he's saying, you know, I kill these rappers with my rhymes and my musicianship. But how hard that is to say and how he delivers that, he's starting off being like, you guys are not where I'm at. Right. You guys can't do what I do. In terms of what this did for his career, we know it made him. It made him. And again, I think it was such a big deal for hip hop overall
for, again, he's like, I don't want to say the king of backpack rap, but he is he's on the Mount Rushmore.
For sure.
Easily. And I think that it's just such a big deal that it kind of survives everything. Like there's not a person, I honestly don't think there's a person, if you enjoy music, you can play this and you will be into it 1,000%. And it didn't age poorly.
It aged extremely well.
It didn't really age. Like you can still go back and listen to it and be like, yeah, this could have dropped today, you know?
How well this aged shows how kind of tumultuous his career has been.
Yeah.
Just from an actual musical standpoint. Because had he stayed down this road, down this path, and made more, Illmatic type of albums along the years, his career probably goes a lot different. And you see many times along the way where he tries to go for that hit or a bigger sound or less rappy. And it's funny, he's got his recent success and his one and only Grammy going back to his old style. So it's crazy that seeing the first album, Illmatic, you think Nas, his music actually aged better than he did.
Yeah,
and,
that's so true.
It's sad to say, but it really is evident here. I think as well, this made him be one of the leaders of the genre right away. I think we talked about a lot of artists in their first two albums. They're making their way. They're pretty popular. We've talked about Doja Cat last week and Jack Harlow. He was ahead of both of them just instantly. And again, it was a different time in hip hop where, of course, it's pre-internet, but this was a time where you could have respect without having sales. Yep. You being someone who didn't sell as well as Vanilla Ice wouldn't stop you from being considered one of the leaders of the genre. We are definitely far away from that place currently. But this album set him up for so much success. And he did have good albums after this, of course. This was not the end of Nas's career of being a good artist. But I think he's a huge part of that culture that says, I miss your first album. I miss your old stuff. Yeah. Nas falls right into that.
Absolutely. I think one of the, also legacy-wise for him is like, the songs still get played, and I think that The World Is Yours, that was in 2K. I
forgot about that.
That was in 2K, yeah. It was one of the major songs. I think it was like 2K16 or 17, something like that. It's in 2K, like it still gets played. Like
even New York State of Mind.
Yeah, New York State of Mind still gets played
synced so often.
Yeah, so it's not even like, that's what I'm saying, like it aged incredibly because people still play it. Like it's still something that is part of the zeitgeist. The one-liners are definitely part of the zeitgeist. Those are, again, things that you can, I don't sleep because sleep is a cousin death is in a million rap songs.
Yeah.
It's in you could just,
legendary.
Yeah, you could just copy paste that in your Google search and then
see what comes up.
just see what comes up because that is in every single fucking rap song. And I think the Dead Presidents to Represent Me again is like the longevity on that is insane. So overall, it is such an important album just because of those influences, and then even the jazz. It's like the jazz rap. It's like kind of like
he was a huge part of popularizing.
Yeah, it's like the gold standard for jazz rap when it sounds like this. So I think that it's a bullet in the genre.
Oh, for sure,
it's a bullet in the genre.
Yeah, I think too. Well, the thing I always think about with Nas is Nas didn't have as much of a direct influence on the generation that wasn't around for Illmatic.
Right.
They're like, okay, y'all keep talking about this Illmatic thing, but I wasn't there, and that was the attitude. And I think about someone like J. Cole, who has made Nas almost a part of his career. He did his own song called Illmatic, obviously a play off of Illmatic.
I Don't Want to Let Nas Down.
And of course, Let Nas Down.
Yeah.
And I think about that because I can't think of another relationship like that in hip hop where this artist is making a song about one of the greats and letting him down. That doesn't. Can you name another time that has happened? And for that to be Nas, I think is really interesting because I don't think everyone would think of Nas to be that guy. I think of Kanye making Big Brother for Jay-Z.
Yeah.
Very different tone than Let Nas Down. So I think that's pretty interesting. I want to ask you if it's a no skips if you're getting the vinyl, but
I have the vinyl. The one that you're seeing over my shoulder is a personal copy of Illmatic. I think it was probably one of the first vinyls I ever. Yeah, one of the first records I ever got. Just because it's such an undeniable classic. Definitely a no skips. How do you feel about the cover though? The cover is actually something
legendary. Like I love it for so many reasons. One, the Queensbridge, like with the crossfade with his face, I think is genius. Two, like the kids on the cover of albums.
Yeah.
I think that has always done well. That's not something like,
Yeah, Ready to Die also, there was a kid on that too,
a few months later. So
Nirvana had the kid on the front of it too.
So it's like it's something that just never ends. But I like this a lot because he was a teenager when he started making this album.
Yeah.
And he was a literal rap prodigy.
Mm-hmm.
And so the image of a kid in Queensbridge, that's what this album really is.
Right.
Is the story of a kid in Queensbridge.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what the cover is too. So
yeah.
I love it for that reason.
Yeah, I think that the cover also, it's just I like the color. The color scheme is really weird. Like it's like a red, orange,
like Tim's.
brown. Yeah. For real though.
It is. No, it is. That's the color of New York.
Yeah, it's like this red, orange, brown like shade, right? And it's also like I feel like it's not like his name is also on it too, but it's not like intrusive. Like everything is framed around the kid. Right, the kid is like this,
and his name is bigger than the name of the album. That's something that doesn't happen as much anymore.
Facts. That is a huge fact. Almost nobody ever really puts. Well, they put their name on it, but it's like
not as big as the name of the album. Yeah.
And I do think it's valid. It's valid. I think it's extremely valid. I think that the cover is cool, and again, it feeds into that New York of like everything New York. We're doing everything New York. Don't escape it. You can't even look, even if you look at it, you're looking at the place, right? So I think that is cool to just, it feeds into the aesthetic. Unique color combo, because most covers are usually, I'm going to be honest with you, they're going for a more appealing color combo. They're trying to do a black and white, some blue, purple, pink, something like that. So being like brown, tan, and red. Black and white, like not really a lot of people are going for that. Maybe the game.
The game definitely.
But that's pretty much it.
That's funny.
So applaud for that too, because it's a kind of a rare color scheme. So I think it's awesome. Do you have a score? Should we even do a score? I mean, if you want to do a score, you can do a score.
I think we should. We did a score for NWA.
Yeah,
I think
that's true.
I think it would be wrong to not give Nas a score.
Yeah.
For me, this is a 10.
Right.
This is a perfect album to me. 10 songs.
Yeah, it's also very short. Yeah, we didn't even mention that. It's 40 minutes.
Yeah, 40 minutes, 10 songs. Like, that is the perfect length. And as well, what I think makes this album stand out so much for me personally is that stands out as an album.
Yeah.
There isn't that one song that it's like, oh, that's the album with that on it. No, this is Illmatic.
Yeah.
We know it as the full body of work as the album. So knowing something as the album in this way, even for other classic albums, which I'm sure we're going to review later, is rare. Even some of our favorite albums, we have a song we think of that goes with that album. So for this album to be known as the album speaks to how great it is. So this may be my only 10 out of 10, depending, because this is one of the most undeniable albums in the history of music. So
yeah, for real,
easy 10 for me.
Yeah, because people talk about like To Pimp a Butterfly or something like that. Like this is like that. Like that's. The Pimp a Butterfly entered the Illmatic realm, not the other way around. You know what I mean? Like that's how important it is and how great it is. I think I'm gonna say it's a 9.5 out of 10. I think my only issue is the slowdown in one time for you, right?
Yeah, one time for your mind.
One time for your mind, I think is my only thing where I'm like, But there's so many things. I mean, I could say 10 out of 10 just because its influence immense. The rapping is literally A1 gold standard. This is God MC type shit, right? And there's hooks in it, but the hooks are good. The hooks are the iconic lines. Life's a bitch and then you die. That's the hook, right? And it's also an iconic line. Then there's just straight up iconic one-liners. Nas is somehow funny with the Malcolm X bar. That is not something
that bar was funny.
Yeah, that's Nas is usually not really a funny rapper. He's very serious. And the aesthetic choice when you feel like you're trapped in New York, and not in a bad way. But you're fully in New York all the way. Multiple shout outs to New York, which also feeds into the regionalism of hip hop at that time. So I could straight up just say 10 out of 10. I just think I'm saying like 9 out of 10 just because I'm like, oh, this is like slight scuff.
Okay.
But it legitimately is just like a 10 out of 10. Like there's not any flaws that are like
Yeah, no, there's
yeah,
none.
you know,
none.
there's nothing that's being taken away
Mhm.
in this project. So Illmatic is a 10 out of 10, legitimately a 10 out of 10. I'm just being hyper picky because I'm me, but
Fair.
it's a 10 out of 10. Brilliance.
Yeah,
If you haven't heard it, stop listening to any other music and then listen to this and then go back to listening to other music.
and as we're wrapping this up, please let us know in the comments on Instagram at Album Mode Pod, Twitter at Album Mode Pod, TikTok at Album Mode Pod, YouTube at Album Mode Pod. How familiar are you with Illmatic? Are you new to this album? Are we putting you on right now? I can't believe that could be true, but we've seen some crazy things in the comments on TikTok.
That's
so
true.
if you tell us how familiar you are with this album, Illmatic. It's your first time hearing it. Have you only heard it once? Do you only know of the project? Have you never heard of Nas?
That would be crazy.
Wherever you fall on that spectrum,
Please comment. Oh my God.
yeah, we want to know. And of course, make sure you subscribe to us on all your podcast platforms: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts,
YouTube.
YouTube Podcasts.
I mean, no, just subscribe to us on YouTube.
Yeah, subscribe to us on YouTube as well. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. And of course, until next time, know yourself, know your worth.
Later days.